I think we'd all agree that when it comes to our relationships with our friends or the people that maybe we spend a lot of time with, we want real relationships, not fake ones, right? I know that I personally don't want fake friends. Now, whether it's the people you hang out with from the band or your teammates, or maybe even the people that you've got a group chat kind of going with, we all want our relationships to be personal. Now, there's an easy way to figuring out if a relationship is personal. You know how I know if somebody is not really that personal with me? They call me some generic nickname like buddy or boss or hey. People knowing our names matter, right? It makes us feel important. It makes us feel like there's a connection between us and the person who knows our name. Nobody wants a fake friend or a fake relationship. But you know what the opposite of fake is? Real, right? The opposite of fake is real. But when it comes to relationships, I think there's a better word that we can use. When it comes to people, the opposite of real is personal. Think about it. Somebody can be real without knowing you personally. They can know something about you, like maybe what math class you're in, or may even notice some of the things that you like to do. But that doesn't make it personal. Being personal puts somebody in a whole different category. And that's what we're talking about in this series. It's personal. If I asked you to name everyone that you can think of who knows your name, how many people do you think would be on that list? Now, would you put God on that list? Now, some of you may have grown up hearing that God knows your name. And there's a bunch of examples in the Bible about how God closely knows us. Like in Luke chapter 12, verse 7, when Jesus says, "And the very hairs on your head are all numbered." Now, that's getting pretty personal. While we all might think it's a little weird to know how many hairs are on our heads, some of us struggle with the idea of God really knowing us. Maybe you feel like, does God really know me? You might feel like he doesn't seem personal because you can't see God or you can't hear him talk back whenever you pray. Or maybe you don't really know much about God or even care much about God, so it feels strange to think that he'd know your name and care about you. Here's what's true. Fake is the opposite of how Jesus lived. He got personal with everyone he met. He knew their names. He knew their stories. One of these people who Jesus interacted with helps me believe that God is a personal God is a guy named Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus was a tax collector, which might not seem like a really big deal to you, but back then, tax collectors were bad guys. Zacchaeus was a Jewish guy working for the Roman Empire, an entire nation that bullied the Jewish people. Now, that's bad enough, but tax collectors weren't exactly the best guys. They'd always collect more than what was actually owed so that they could pocket the rest of the money. This guy was a chief tax collector, kind of like the worst of the worst. Now, at this point in Jesus' life, he was known for all the miracles he performed and all the powerful message that he'd given. And everywhere he went, crowds would gather just to get a glimpse of this Jesus who was healing people. And that's what happened when he was passing through the town of Jericho on his way to Jerusalem. He met this guy named Zacchaeus. Luke chapter 19, beginning in verse 6 says, "When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. 'Zacchaeus,' he said, 'quick, come down. I must be a guest in your house today.' Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in great excitement and joy. Out of this giant crowd following Jesus to Jerusalem, Jesus stops and chats with Zacchaeus, maybe the most hated man in this whole town. Realize, getting this kind of attention from Jesus is crazier than if your favorite celebrity randomly began following you on Instagram and started commenting and DMing you on all your pictures. Kind of weird, right? Kind of crazy. Not only did Jesus call out the guy who was watching from the tree, but did you notice that Jesus called him by name? He didn't say, "Hey you, hey guy." He called Zacchaeus by name. Not only does Jesus call him by name, but Jesus invited himself over to Zacchaeus' house. And everyone knew how much of an honor this was. And look how they responded, Luke 19, verse 7. but the people were displeased. He is God to be the guest of a notorious sinner. Real talk. Why do we care? I think it's because this isn't just a story about Zacchaeus. It's about Jesus and how he treats people. He paid attention to the little guy, the guy who annoyed everyone else, the guy that nobody was noticing, the guy that I bet nobody cared to try to learn his name. Here's what you need to know. Jesus knows your name too. The best thing for some of us to do this week is to find a way to see for ourselves what Jesus is like. Zacchaeus probably had no intention of totally changing his life when he first got up that tree, but he was just taking the first step towards seeing Jesus for himself. No matter what you think about God or faith or Christians, I want you to know this. It's personal because Jesus knows your name. Now, what would it look like for you to hop in that tree to get a better look? To maybe rethink what God is like? To maybe start asking some questions? Questions like, what is God really like? What does God say about me? And what does God say maybe about the people around me? Jesus changed the way everybody thought about God. And our relationship with Jesus is always personal. It's personal for you and it's personal for me. So let me ask this. How can we make it personal for others? Here's why this is a big deal. The people around you may not know God cares about them personally until you care about them personally. The best way to do this may start with some of the easiest steps that you've ever heard. Learn people's names. Learn the right way to pronounce people's names. And use their names whenever you see them. You see, knowing someone's name is the simplest thing that we can do to communicate that someone matters. One of the greatest ways that we can point people to this kind of personal God is by modeling what it looks like to be personal with others. This is why we have small groups. We believe every person is loved and known personally by Jesus. And because of that, we want you to always have a group of people who know you personally, who knows your name, and they know your story. Jesus always made it personal with the people around him. And you can too by simply just beginning to know their names.